Hello everyone and welcome back to another Guild Wars 2 video. Today I'm going to be continuing the discussion, the talk, that is Guild Wars 2 the Icebrood Saga. This video is going to be focusing on one of the new features. Well, my main interest for the features is the new feature of strike missions, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. This video is going to be more of an organic discussion. I have a couple notes here just in case I want to have some, outline, but for the most part, I'm going to be talking about my first impressions of them when they announced it, some of the imagery that they have showed, and how it connects to other areas of the game. So when they first announced strike missions, I was hyped. I was like, oh, okay, this is going to be, I took it as like another form of raiding, which is deviating from the format of raids that they currently have. When the developers were talking, they had mentioned that it was going to be quote unquote easier than the current rating system that they have, and be sort of an introductory system for players who still are interested in that 10-man PvE content. And I think that is extremely important to have in Guild Wars 2, as I would say objectively a lot of the people playing are much more quote unquote casual, and it's still probably smart to keep those players engaged. But do I think it is also important to keep hardcore players in the game? Absolutely. I think that is also an area that definitely needs much more love and support, and just a little bit more nourishment. But this video is about strike missions. So, first impressions of strike missions, I was very excited to see that they were moving in a different direction other than bounties and other than just massive 50-player zergs on world bosses. Despite them being fun, this concentrated party size will still have much, in my opinion, I would imagine it to have much more engaging, fun content. Kind of like, was it Lair of the Snowman? Did Lair of the Snowman have a 10-person cap or a 50-person cap? And also, did the newest Dragon Bash fight have a 10-person cap or a 5-person cap or a 50-person cap? I'm not sure. But when I was playing Dragon Bash with around 10 players, it felt very engaging, and especially when you went on the higher difficulty scales and the challenge mode, it was a system of the game that required cooperation, and it required players to understand their class a little bit, and also to be comfortable communicating and changing up their builds. And I think strike missions, if implemented correctly and sustained, have a very bright future in Guild Wars 2. Now, when they said that it's going to be more of an introductory, beginner version of raiding, I'm a little scared, because when ArenaNet says, oh, we're making things easy, my personal opinion on the game is that it's already very easy, it's already very accessible. Yes, there's challenge in some areas, but for the most part, it's nothing that I'm like beating my head against the keyboard with. And to some extent, I would like that. So with these strike missions, I'm excited to test them out and to play with them. However, I still think that there needs to be a fair amount of difficulty if this is truly going to be a system where they're aiming for players to have an introduction to raiding. Hopefully that also means that we're getting more raids soon. More to be determined. But if this is indeed a fact, a system where they want people to be introduced, make it easier, but still have a sense of difficulty and have like phasing and mechanics where people have to cooperate and understand what they're doing. It doesn't have to be Doom level, it doesn't have to be Deimos level. I think Samurog If anything, Samurag and the Mersat Overseer, like those quote unquote easier bosses, are great bosses for strike missions. That would be my preferred difficulty, where I think it offers a challenge, but it isn't necessarily a cakewalk. Um, to the topic of difficulties, I know this will never happen. Well, I don't know if this will never happen, but this is something that I doubt will become uh, a feature of strike missions. My dream scenario would be that it is a, I know this sounds awful, but if it was like a hot join system where you like queue up for, like, you need some players for support, players for damage, and players to have a more bruisery, tanky play style. Having something to queue up into, or just to straight randomize cooperating, or to straight randomize and select 10 random people and just throw them in at once. I think that could also be cool. But to have a system where you can maybe queue up for it, I think that would be fun. But in addition to that queuing up system, what I'm going to say next is my main topic. If you have a difficulty scaling, so you have like normal and then maybe like an expert mode for it, where they have a little bit more health, do a little bit more damage, and maybe have like one or two new mechanics. That would be much more work. And I doubt that would happen. But the only reason I had recommended the queuing up system is because that's how I would imagine it to be the easiest way to implement a difficulty scaling, where you just check a box, be like, oh, this is the normal, checking the box, this is the expert / higher difficulty one. But this is still yet to be determined, because we haven't actually tested out how difficult these bosses are. And of course, the subject of difficulty is subjective. So that was my first initial impressions of the difficulty, the topic of difficulty. And I would also, this video is just also about speculations of strike missions. I would also love if they made strike missions into mini raids, where they have like 3 bosses in a quote-unquote dungeon / raid, and made strike missions an extension, an addition to the normal formula of raiding. The only difference, I would say, for strike missions, to have them be much more consistent, is that you don't need to have heavy exposition of lore and voice acting. Yeah, you can maybe have like a couple notes, or talk to an NPC with like written dialogue or written lore, but I feel that voice acting is definitely an area of Guild Wars 2 which holds them back on a lot, because I feel that ArenaNet almost is pressured into delivering high quality voice acted segments or features of the game. But I don't think games need voice acting. I really don't. Is it wonderful, and is it a quality of life? Yes. But I also think when it comes to delaying content for the sake of having voice actors, just give us the content. Give us solid content. I don't care if I have to read, interact with an NPC to gain some lore information. I would much rather have much more frequent, high quality content to play. So that's my little thought bubble about, could this be a system where they make quote unquote raids, but at a more frequent rate? It doesn't have to be, also doesn't have to be like 5 raid bosses. They have the traditional 3 raid bosses in a wing, which I would love to see expanded. Maybe this is a way to do that. We have a strike mission. Wonder if they were called strike dungeons or strike raids. But these strike missions, maybe you could have like 5 bosses in a strike mission. I, for now, can only see them putting one boss in a strike mission, and that might be what they're going to be going with. So that's my thought on a possibility of a raiding aspect to strike missions, a raiding tie-in, an altering the way people or ArenaNet does raids. My next idea, or next hope, is that they had mentioned this on the live stream is that they would be reusing bosses that they already have to tweak them up a little bit and make them 10-player content. And to that extent, and this is also just me combining what they've said about Living World and how they're going to maybe be reusing maps and fleshing them out and exploring already existing assets and maps. Combining that with the system of strike missions. I would love if they went back and made certain bounties or just world bosses strike missions where it's a concentrated 10-player scenario. It might be a little bit more difficult, like these legendary bounties, the Choyas, the Icebrood in that Immaculate Fringe, the Pyramid in the Crystal Oasis, the Forged enemies, some Jinn, some of the Hydra. I think these legendary bounties could be and might be high candidates to be strike mission bosses. And I think that would also be a very fun addition to strike missions. In addition with strike missions, I just wanted to touch on like what they have already shared. So currently they have stated that the first strike mission will be coming with the prologue, Bound by Blood, September 17th. And we've gotten some sneak peeks at it with the model of the Icebrood, and some of its attacks telegraphed, seems to maybe go into phases with like swirling animations. I didn't really see 10 players. It might have just been the camera angle, but to me I was like, oh, 10 players would have looked like a little bit more. But it looked to be like a smaller just arena with a single boss. But in the distance, it also looked like there was a bridge leading to another area. There was a higher plateau area. So I'm like, where do we enter? Does this area, in fact, expand? Is it out in the open world? It seems to be, it might be out in the open world. Is it instanced? I'm still slightly confused with the details about how they're actually going to implement these strike missions. And not only did we get some footage of the Icebrood, we got some concept art of the bone. Oh my god, I already forgot his name. Bone scraper, bone. Hold on, a bone skinner. Bone skinner. I knew it started with another bone S something. So it's the bone skinner. Interestingly enough, we have two pieces of concept art. During the live stream, they showed off the bone skinner with just a very normal looking ox bull skull, and I thought it looked awesome. But then in the blog post, we got another image of the bone skinner with a very detailed skull face, slightly more original, detailed with fangs. It looked to be a bit more alive. Now, with the more, in my opinion, the one of the blog posts was slightly more creepy. I would love for that one to be the end result for the strike mission boss. However, I think the less creepy, quote unquote, less creepy version of the bone skinner is still creepy, and I would love for that just to be like boss or like little ads that we fight out in the open world, or ads that the bone skinner summons. Like have a strike boss that will summon ads, which are also of respectable difficulty that you have to deal with. I don't really feel like we get a lot of bosses where we have to deal with multiple ads during the fight. Like the Mersat statue, you don't fight that. You're just kind of dealing with the ads that spawn. And then Samurag, that's when he phases and he isn't really fighting you, and you just have to deal with Rigum and Goldum. And then yeah, I would love to have more bosses with high pressure ads. I guess Desmina does a good job with the ads. So yeah, that's my thoughts on what we've seen so far. And yeah, I'm really interested in the strike missions. I'm excited to test them out on the 17th. And I hope that they are much more frequent than raids. I really do. Especially if they're like 1 to 2 boss wings. Hell, best scenario is that there are like more than 3 bosses in a wing, but you don't have to have voice acting. You don't really have to have extreme exposition on lore. You can have like an NPC at the very beginning where they're like, yo, this is what's happening. We have some creatures up in the far Shiver Peaks, or wherever we are, doing a lot of bad stuff, and they're just causing havoc around the local area. Or maybe we're in the Char homelands, and they're like, oh, yo, we have some, like, a giant devourer that's been, like, corrupted by Icebrood and is being twisted, and he's kind of grotesque and creepy and has killed a couple Char. Go deal with them. That's my most desired outcome, is that it's not voice acted. I know that sounds awful, but I don't want them to feel like they have to voice act, and that would prolong it. If that even does prolong it, I'm still not sure about, like, the intricacies of, like, how long it takes to voice act. Is there issues? Does it extend things? I would, perfect scenario, have mechanics, put them in a boss, mix match mechanics, and then ship them off in a little nook of a dungeon area where people could enter with a squad of 10 of their friends or 10 randoms and go in and fight. I also want to see how they deal with rewards and achievement collections, but that is something we'll have to wait for another day. Thank you everyone for watching. Like the video if you liked it, comment below on your thoughts on the strike missions. I have so many comments to respond to. I know I've been really bad. I'm like, I don't know, I have to respond to comments. I've been so busy with school and everything. And yeah, subscribe for more content, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye everyone.